Yo, what's shaking, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of the Orange Bloods Modcast. I'm back. Alex is back. It's a full ensemble for today's spring pre-game discussion. As I mentioned, Geoff Ketchum, Anwar Richardson, Alex Dunlap, Jason Suchomel. Guys, we're all here. As you filter into today's show, make sure you do us a solid and like the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done that. And we do have to mention that today's Modcast is sponsored by MyPerfectFranchise.net. Check that out. If you're tired of working for the man and you're just ready to try something new and do your own thing, contact our guy Andy over at MyPerfectFranchise.net. Give him a call, 404-973-9901. Check out the website, though. The bottom line is he can help make your dreams come true with regards to running your own business. He can help you devise a plan, do that thing that can help you potentially start living the life that you've always wanted to live. Fellas.
Jason's writing down the number right now, actually.
Everybody should be right now.
Hey, man, I've been out there to Alabama to visit Andy and go fishing and stuff like that, dude. That guy's living large, man. He's definitely living his best life with all his franchises for sure.
Even our guy Money Out to Anus, who's like one of the very first people to comment in the chat, even he can help elevate his life a little bit with just a little love from our guy Andy over at MyPerfectFranchise.net. Fellas, spring game, it's like 48 hours away and some change. Anwar, I'll start with you. The school, including Sarkisian today, emphasizing that this isn't going to be a game. There's not going to be a score kept. It's going to be kind of a regular practice with some scrimmage setting type stuff, but that this isn't what we typically expect out of a spring game setting. So with that kind of being established, what are you looking forward to the most with whatever will take place on Saturday? Is it just seeing the team in general? Is it seeing the quarterbacks? Like, where's your head 48 hours, knowing that, this won't even be what a year ago was when it felt like something a little more traditional and a game, and score was kept, if I remember correctly. And I don't know. What are you thinking?
I mean, it's just a practice at this point. I mean, it's no. I can't say there's much to get excited about as relates to it, because I mean they may do a couple of little things, and he talked about maybe doing some red zone work at the end, but essentially this is kind of a practice / scrimmage, kind of don't expect much from it. So because we're not going to have a Hudson Card versus Quinn Ewers and the teams divided and kind of everyone going at each other, and it's just going to be a practice of some sorts. I can't say Ketchum is much for me to be excited about. You want to know what my thoughts are? Like, let me just go ahead and let's just get it over with at this point.
Fair enough. Jason, does a spring game matter at all? Like, I can't even remember if there was a score a year ago, so it can't be that important. I do know that in general, I want these things to be a smidge entertaining. I hope on Saturday we at least get that a little smidge of entertainment.
Yeah, I think it'll be entertaining. I mean, listen, it's all about Quinn Ewers, I think, for most people, right? I mean, people have seen Hudson Card, and that's not to say that they shouldn't be paying attention to Hudson, but everybody wants to see Quinn Ewers. I think Ryan Watts, Isaiah Nayor, two new faces in the program. Maybe couple of the true freshmen that arrived early that will be playing. Cole Hudson, maybe your dude Justice Finkley. So there's still things to watch. I broke down the top 5 things I'll be kind of looking for in my 3-2-1. The offensive line, the kicking game is always of interest to me, especially this year with I don't know who's going to be kicking. I'm assuming it's going to be Bert Auburn, new punter. So there's things to watch, but like we said, or like y'all said, I mean, to answer your question, Ketch, yes, there are things to watch. Yes, it'll have some interest, but am I going to walk away from this game thinking that I learned a whole lot about this team? Probably not.
So, Alex, as somebody who would genuinely love to just sit down and be able to take in a full practice as opposed to 10 minutes during stretching, This probably doesn't bum you out too much. I mean, getting a chance to see 11 on 11, the team in its usual setting and kind of what it looks like might not be a terrible thing. Let me ask the question in a different way for you. Give me the handful of things on Saturday you personally, and it can be whatever dark, sick, twisted things you want them to be, the things you're looking forward to most seeing with your own eyes.
Well, you're exactly right. It's like, practice access from John Bianco has been so, useless and miserable this year that it's, it'll be good. No, I mean, he's always terrible about access.
No,
but
we're off the rails.
This year it's been worse than anything dating back to 2013. But anyway, just getting to see a full practice, to me, that's going to be interesting and fun. I also like it because I won't look at Anwar. I also don't. I'm also like, I don't mind not having to do the whole spring game deep dig. Do you remember every year how I complained to you guys? I'm like, damn, this spring game deep dig, it takes forever because you have to do basically 4 teams as opposed to just 2 teams, an offense and a defense. So I'll be glad that hopefully there'll just be some team drills that I can just do the charting for and not have to do it for a whole game. As far as things that I'm looking for, tonight in the war room, we'll have, I talked to Jason and Anwar about this last night and earlier today. There's no practice notes coming out of practice today. No one's talking about anything except looking forward to the spring game. So we're going to put out a projected depth chart. And like, there's still some spots on this thing. Like access has been so bad to where there still are some spots that I'm legitimately wondering what it looks like. I'm wondering where some of these guys, some of these younger DBs, where they fit in. Where's Terrence Brooks fitting in? Guys like guys like that as far as the spring goes. So I'll be looking at that. I'll be looking about how much do they play DeMarvion Overshown. They've been they've been a little bit worried about him as far as getting him involved in total contact drills throughout the process this far. If they're holding everybody back, do they continue to keep holding him back? Moro Ajomo, I look at him over the defensive tackle. He missed some time during the spring period, but it looks like Alfred Collins is probably going to start in front of Moro Ajomo. So now that they're both healthy, does Alfred Collins line up in front of him? Is Andre Carrick back along the offensive line? And if not, I mean, I think just the biggest thing. Okay, so did Sarkisian say he's not? He wasn't at practice today.
He said it would be limited because of the ankle, aka he's not going to play.
So
sounds like the dreaded high ankle sprain, Alex.
Yeah, I mean, if you've seen him, like what we can see during these practices is just some of the guys walking off the field. He's pretty ginger on that. I believe that on that right leg. So I would not be surprised to hear it. So we'll see Hayden Connor at left tackle. See how that looks. And I mean, we're going to have to start thinking about that as possibly being a viable option coming into next year. I mean, as weird as it sounds, it's going to be Hayden Connor, it's going to be Andre Carrick, or it's going to be a freshman. So who has the best chance there? I mean, a guy like Hayden Connor who's been in the system for a whole year, and the guy who's looked pretty good this spring, can he continue to hold up in this game? And, of course, Cole Hudson over at the right guard, backfilling Hayden Connor's usual spot. We'll get to see him, the quarterbacks, of course, the new wide receiver, Nayor, of course. And I think just seeing some of the depth, too, some of these young guys getting to just get a better, longer look at how dudes like, Austin Bryant or, Justice Finkley, or even some of these guys we didn't get that much of a look at last year that we wanted to see more this year, but the defense is so far away. The Jordan Thomases, the David Abiaras, these kinds of players, just getting a longer, better look at some of these guys, being able to wrap our heads around sort of where they fit in.
Can I jump in and say, on behalf of everybody, I'm just so happy Anwar had pants on when he stood up.
Jason, you're lucky because I just came from Sark, so so I had no chance to just get comfortable. But now that would have been everyone kept commenting on the shirt. I was like, well, hell, Alice is talking. I'll just go ahead and get the hat on.
Well, we got a lot more likes if you hadn't had pants on, maybe. But one thing about the quarterback play, I'll be curious.
I was sure Ketch was going to come back with a cowboy hat on. I feel like I got to go get my cowboy hat for this thing.
Jason, I had pants on too when I got up, so
it
we're all
does seem like
today.
There's maybe been a lot of turnovers in the passing game this spring, so. Will they be able to get that cleaned up? I mean, is either quarterback going to come out and throw 1, 2, 3 interceptions? I don't know. That may be one thing we're talking about coming out of this game, because it seems like, at scrimmages and things of that, we've heard of multiple pick sixes being thrown and multiple turnovers in the passing game. So if I'm really fine pointing the quarterback play, that'll be something I'm looking at.
I do look like the dude from the state fair.
You do look like the guy from the state fair.
I do look like.
That is too good. It's so spot on. It hurts.
But Jason, I mean, to your point, though, what kind of evaluation do you think you really do if this is just kind of like a practice setting? And you really, if he's worried about the offensive lineman getting hurt in depth that he has on there, that means what are we seeing? Some routes on air, maybe some DBs versus receivers. I mean, I'm just kind of curious. What do you think we'll actually be able to learn?
I think we'll see some. I'm assuming we'll see some scrimmage action, right? There's got to be some 11-on-11. I sure as hell hope so. Otherwise, it's a waste of a drive down to campus if not. So.
There might only be 20 minutes of that as opposed, you know what I mean? Like,
is it not going to be televised? Will it not be televised? Is this not televised? Do you guys know? I haven't even looked. Is this on LHN?
Have to believe it.
I'm assuming it is.
Of course, it's got to be on something.
Maybe somebody in the chat could let us know. I can't believe.
Quite honestly, if we're assuming anything about the Longhorn Network, we're probably going to be wrong.
What you're saying is a possibility they could be playing some like LBJ video during the spring game.
They are such a lame duck television station. they just at this point they're just mailing it in because they know that once
that
Texas
investment's
moves to the
not
SEC,
coming now, Alex.
All right, so it looks like the chat's saying a bunch of people are saying this is going to be on LHN. So yeah, man, I won't be wasting the time with gas prices how they are right now to get down to the stadium for this.
I think the most exciting thing is it is a chance to see Quinn Ewers for the first time, really, for most people in a Texas uniform. And then you start thinking about the freshmen, but I think people are going to want to see Isaiah Nayor in a Texas uniform for the first time. And what does Ryan Watts look like? So I think that Jatavian Sanders, we didn't see a lot last season. So it's a chance to see him. So
I should have mentioned that as a big storyline too, Cash. JT Sanders.
Yeah.
He should, for sure. That's
so cool. I think that, the part of the spring game that is exciting, I think, for most people is the idea of hope going into a season that maybe this is a Texas team that's going to end up surpassing expectations for once. And if that's the case, then in theory, the spring game or the spring practice that they allow you to see, you'd hope to see some morsels of hope that can lead you to think that way. I mean, I think we know that if they let Xavier Worthy play a whole lot, he'll do something. But I'm kind of interested to see what some of these younger pieces, these unseen pieces have done. Jason, I wanted to change the topic kind of early in the Modcast and go directly to transfer portal discussion. I think the single biggest story of this week so far has been the commitment of Alabama transfer wide receiver Ajay Hall, which if you're watching the Modcast right now and you're wondering about specifically how is his name pronounced, Anwar and I checked on this earlier in the week. Ajay. Because there had been some thought that maybe it was Ajay based on something I'd seen in an Alabama video that had said that Ajay Hall had said specifically this is how he pronounces his name. But we went to people that would know, and it's Ajay. And you talked to Caleb Johnson earlier today, Jason. There's going to be a big piece of that in the war room tonight. We're waiting on O'Shawn Mathis to make his announcement, which I think is kind of expected this weekend. The transfer portal is hot and heavy. Let's start with the latest on Caleb Johnson, and we can eventually work our way backwards. We can talk about Johnson and Mathis, and then maybe do a little bit of a deep dig on. Didn't mean to steal your stuff there, Alex, but since myperfectfranchise.net is the sponsor, maybe the whole thing should just be the deep dig. Your thoughts on what you heard from Johnson, Jason?
Yeah, I literally just hung up with him maybe 45 minutes ago, so it's a very fresh conversation. Posted some notes on our message board on orangebloods.com, and as you said, I'll have a full report in the war room with direct quotes from him. But yeah, I thought it was interesting. And, for me, it's kind of come full circle. I covered him as a JUCO linebacker when Texas was recruiting him, right, with the previous staff. And he and I were talking. He goes, man, it was like visiting a whole new program. I mean, it's new people, it's new facilities. Other than being in the city of Austin, he goes, it was like a whole other world for him. So really good visit. He visited Miami late last week. I think it maybe spilled into the weekend a little bit, Thursday through Saturday or something. But he just got back from his Texas visit last night. He's out in Cali. And he and I were talking, and I can say this pretty confidently. He came out of that Miami visit. Well, first off, a lot of people thought he was going to commit to Miami on the visit. He did not. But he came out of that Miami visit pretty well decided he was going to be a Miami Hurricane. Then he visits Texas, and he said the Texas visit was better than expected. And it really opened his eyes, and he told me he's still undecided. He wants to decide this weekend. He said this trip to UT was strictly about football. I mean, he went to meetings, he went to practice, he poured over his film with the UT coaches. They literally watched every game he played at UCLA and broke down why he can be a good fit at Texas and why they need him. The staff did a really good job. He did tell me he's undecided. We were kind of talking on and off the record, so I tend to believe him when he tells me that. But I think Texas getting that last visit, and I think the staff did a good enough job. I'm leaning Texas on this one, but I don't think we'll have our definitive answer until probably this weekend.
It's funny, Jason, because I got a PM earlier this week from somebody who was alerting us that Ajay Hall would be committing later that day. That person ended up being right. And they had also let us know that they were hearing that Caleb Johnson was going to be a Longhorn on Saturday. So, I was like, hey, let's make sure we're all on this Caleb Johnson story, because we had been hearing that it was expected to be Miami, even with the Texas visit. It felt like maybe one of those deals where
that was for Miami people, to be clear. Maybe they were a little overly optimistic, but yeah. But
even in your conversation with Caleb Johnson, he admitted that Miami coming out of that was in a really good position. Mm-hmm. We haven't heard anything that would make us think that Texas, this isn't going to happen for them. So, I
think Ketch just froze up on me, but I'll jump in. Oh, there you go.
Yeah, there he is. I think he froze up, Ketch.
I will say this, Ketch, that I talked to or communicated with a Texas source last night, and literally, as you were talking, I just got another text from this person. And maybe this person's sandbagging. I think I told you this last night, but I don't get the impression that Caleb told anybody at Texas he's definitively coming, okay? I think there's some confidence there. And it was interesting to me that it was really expressed to me how badly Texas wants Caleb Johnson. They don't view him as just, okay, he's a guy who could maybe come in and help a little bit here and there, or provide some depth at that linebacker spot. No, he is viewed by people inside the Texas program as a true difference maker for their defense if they can land him. So again, I didn't get the impression that he told anybody at Texas, hey, it's for sure going to be Texas. Maybe this person's sandbagging a little bit, letting Caleb have his moment. But, I do tend to lean Texas if and when he makes his decision this weekend.
Anwar, if you add what people inside the program seem to think would be an impact player in Caleb Johnson at linebacker, and there's no reason at this point to feel like O'Shawn Mathis is not going to end up at Texas. I think about that little leap of faith you took a week ago. Does Caleb Johnson move your meter at all? Like hearing that they're this excited about the possibility of him being in the program?
Not as much catch as an O'Shawn Mathis kind of moves the needle for me. I feel, it seems like Sarkisian feels pretty confident and feels good about some of the guys that they have right now. Jason may speak to this a little bit more. I don't know if Caleb is being brought in to, compete to start or for some, depth. I'm sure.
I think they want him to start as a middle linebacker.
Yeah, I'm sure they're not telling him come in and be a backup, but
get 10 snaps a game. But come on,
yeah. But no, I don't think it moves the needle as much for me, Catch, just because I know a guy like O'Shawn Mathis is an impact player. I know someone like Jai Hall is an impact player, and so for Caleb, we'll see where he fits in. But they seem to have feel good about at least the starting linebackers that they have. So it'd be interesting homecoming. That's for sure. If he does decide to come back to Texas again.
I was speaking of that on where I was joking with Caleb. I said, "Listen, dude," I said, if you commit to Texas, I said, you're going to pull 2 firsts for me in 20 plus years of covering recruiting. He was the first dude I ever talked to when Texas was recruiting him out of JUCO. He took 2 official visits to Colorado because there's kind of it's still a fairly new rule that's in place. If you visit a place and the head coach gets fired, you can take a second official visit. I never even heard of that, but Caleb Johnson did that whatever year that was when he was a JUCO recruit. So he was the first player I ever talked to that took 2 official visits to the same school. And now potentially the first player I've ever covered who left a school and then maybe transfer back. So he and I were just kind of talking about what a wild journey it's been and just how much college football has changed over the last few years with this transfer portal and coaching upheaval and taking multiple visits to the same school. It's just a different evolving world for college football than it ever was.
Jason, he wasn't here with the with the new South End Zone, right? He left before that.
No, this was all new. Yeah, okay. Those plans may have been in place, but it certainly wasn't. Construction wasn't started or anything.
I'm a little disappointed that O'Shawn Mathis's mom hasn't made an appearance in
poor
chat today.
Or something.
That allows us to focus a little bit more on potentially this. And look, if Caleb Johnson commits this weekend, it'll certainly be a big part of what we talk about next week in the Modcast. Maybe Alex will even have some time at that point to look at a little UCLA film from a year ago. He's a really interesting guy because he was, I think, second team All Pac-12 2 years ago during the pandemic year. 5.5 sacks from the inside linebacker position. So you would have thought, that's him springboarding.
That's good.
Yeah, no, exactly. But then a year ago, he only
like Malik. That's like Malik Jefferson style stuff, man. That's good.
Then Alex, a year ago, he only starts 10 of 11 games. And I've joked on the board that one of the comments that stood out about his SID written bio was that in 9 of those games, he recorded at least 2 tackles. And, I wonder if he was leaving UCLA because he's, he didn't start every game after last year. Your thoughts on Ford at that middle linebacker position right now? On a scale of 1 to 10, you think Ford is a what? And what number represents an improvement?
Okay, so on a scale of 1 to 10, where do I rate Jalen Ford as a prospect?
As a player right now.
Oh, and so can you help me out just a little bit with how you define a 10?
All right, let's say 5 is average, flat average. 6 is slightly above average. 7 is, let's say 8 is all conference, 9 is all American, 10 is retire the jersey.
Oh,
so
okay.
7 is plus starter.
So it isn't like 10 is the best player on the Texas defense.
10 would be retire his number. 7
so
means
Texas,
you're a good, solid player.
So basically, Texas doesn't have any 10s, right? I'm not comparing.
They may not have any 7s in that.
Okay,
all right.
I just wanted to, right, but on defense. Okay, so Jalen Ford last year. How many tackles did he? Man, he missed 8 tackles last year on 343 snaps. That's more than I thought. He did. He was good for tackles for a loss, but as far as getting to the quarterback, only 2 hits, 2 pressures last year. So certainly nothing like, nothing sniffing like that's kind of 5 sack range you were just mentioning. I think he's better than, I mean, can I give like a 6?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just wondering.
5.75 maybe. I think he's a little bit better than average, and I think he's got some upside. And I think if we bake in what we've heard from practices this spring, I mean, you guys who've watched the YouTube channel and see the interviews with Serenity or have read any of the write-ups that we've done from those, these guys talk about Jalen Ford as a dude who's really come along, and like that intel's been pretty good. I mean, last year the guy they talked about, like, that was Byron Murphy and Anthony Cook, and you come in and you look and see Anthony Cook was the most productive player on defense. Byron Murphy was the most productive player per snap on defense last year. So, I think I baked some of that into maybe giving him a 6. Otherwise, I think I'd give him a 5.5 or something like that. But I bake in the intel from the players, man. I think that I don't think that he is a screaming, hair on fire, pull the fire alarm kind of, we need somebody to come replace this guy. Yeah. I feel like it's maybe more of a, could we stand to replace this guy? Were we terrible at the linebacker spot last year? Do we need to do everything we can to make sure that doesn't happen again and give ourselves all the best options that we can? A move at the middle linebacker feels a little bit more like that to me.
Anwar, they haven't been shy about wanting linebacker depth, greater linebacker play. I mean, if there's a position that they've really gone all out on in the offseason where they haven't quite hit, it probably is this position.
Yeah, I mean, it's, not for lack of effort, as you've said. Like, they definitely have tried to get guys and talk to numerous people. Just hasn't happened. Which in some ways it seems like that's almost like year 2 in Ketch of trying to find ways to improve this position and not really being able to get a lot of linebackers that they've targeted. So they may get Jason's talking about Caleb potentially coming in, but they eyed some other guys in there, and I think Alex has a really good points as far as the linebackers that they have. Like, you probably say solid at this moment. No one that you like super stand on the table for, but probably just solid. Sarkisian has praised Jalen Ford, and today he talked about the offseason and how much that has helped him, but he hasn't really mentioned a lot of other linebackers. Ketch really hasn't mentioned other guys outside of Jalen Ford, and of course the obvious with DeMarvion. Hasn't mentioned many others. So
that's a great point. He hasn't really.
No
other names come linebacker.
No, and you've had roll call in other positions. Definitely haven't. It's been DeMarvion, obvious, Jalen, of course, his progression, and it's not like a list. And so I think that's really
there really aren't that many though, guys. I mean, there's aren't that many to even look at, right? I mean, who do Brockermeyer's hurt? Richardson's in there right now. Maurice Blackwell's moved to safety. Jalen Hullaby has moved to running back. I mean, you got David Benda, you got Jalen Ford, you got Overshone, you got Richardson, and then I'm looking at the depth chart now. It's like who else do you have as a truly inside guy? Unless sometimes what they do is they'll move Jed Bush in there to play insides, but it's like it's pretty thin. I mean, now that you mention it, pretty thin just as far as spring. And how when things get really thin in spring, it gets coaches feeling really, really goosey about what could happen in the fall and how they do not want to be back in this spot again, which could be some of the stuff that Jason's talking about, the real, insistence on saying like, no, this is just a dude, or, this is a situation that we need to improve.
Well, you talk about Alex, you talk about thin in goosey, which is interesting, where I never heard that before, but that I know how you're using it to the point where we're not doing a spring game. Like, we're not doing a spring game because of that exact same reason. It's not even worried about the fall. He's worried about right now. Like, I don't know, Ketch, you've talked about like the sounding of the alarm as it relates to like the offensive line, and you did a video where you did that alarm siren. As I'm talking, we're thinking like, talk about a sounding of the alarm. There should be alarm bells going off about the linebacker position and how thin that is, and we're to the point where we're canceling we're altering a spring game because of the offensive line. if there ever was like an alarm that should be going off like a tornado, I think saying like, yeah, we're not even going to do that game. We'll just do some other stuff. That should be like your tornado alarm at that point too.
Let me ask you this, Anwar. Like I was just before that I was doing. I was outside. I'm having to dig this trench in my yard right now. It was kind of drizzling, and so I was using it out there while the ground was wet. Do you think that like, so I didn't listen to Sark's press conference. My initial thought when we first got the word that this was going to be like a more like a practice, and I wrote about it in the practice notes on Tuesday. I thought to myself, well, this is because they're not going to want to put one of these quarterbacks behind that second offensive line and have them look like complete crap and have a bunch of questions for these guys to answer. Did Sark actually come out today during the press conference and say it has to do with the offensive line? Because that was always my suspicion. Okay.
Yes.
So how did he say it? He said, I'm worried about them. They're too thin.
Oh, it didn't go that far. I mean, I think as far as like the exacts on it, but let me see if I can find.
It just seemed like he didn't think there'd be a fair representation of play that would allow for like the backups to be able to keep score.
Yeah, he did. I mean, right here. I mean, Alex, it's
can't do it because of the lack of numbers on the offensive line, but we will have basically a live scrimmage for about 100 plays or so, which should be good. With a pretty good competition at the end in the red area that I know our guys are excited about. So
they'll see a live scrimmage for 100 plays.
That's basically a full scrimmage.
Shit. So I might have some work to do.
Sorry, Al.
Do the deep dig. Shit.
You're gonna hate your life on Monday and Tuesday.
And then I gotta get the huddle report mock draft up that I always post on Orange Bloods by at least on Wednesday. It's gonna be
You're gonna hate next week.
Yeah.
Hey, I think what's really important here is if we think that Ford is a 6.5, 7-ish kind of player, it's hard to necessarily think that Johnson would come in and be an 8, but there's a lot of value if you just had an extra Jalen Ford.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
You just had another linebacker that was also a 6.5 and a 7, so that God forbid somebody has to miss a week because there's a bass fishing accident that they're in a position where that doesn't bring everything down because you lose a Ford to an injury. At a program like Texas, your great players getting hurt should bring you down, right? I mean, if Xavier Worthy gets hurt, nobody can quite fill that void. No. But if your 7s get hurt and it brings you down, it really speaks to your lack of depth in the program. And whatever you would think of Johnson, he's definitely improved depth.
Yeah,
I don't know how you can call Jalen Ford a 7 at this point.
I think it's 6.
I would say
like a 6, 6.5.
I'm going based on what we've seen of him, probably a 4.5. Based on what we've heard about practice, I'll go 5.5. But I can't give him much more benefit of the doubt than that. Whereas Caleb Johnson had 70-something tackles in back-to-back years at UCLA. So, I mean, Caleb to me is a much more proven commodity. Yeah, we've heard good things about Jalen Ford this spring, but you guys are giving him a lot of benefit of the doubt, I think.
Can't really completely dispute that too much. I mean,
and like we said, we're kind of baking in some of the intel from the players, right? I mean, yeah. I mean, I think it's fair. We're all in the same pocket. I think it's a fair way to describe
the defense didn't rank 99th in the country in scoring defense last year because they had a bunch of 7s.
Yeah,
on the field at every position at a minimum. Let's talk about Agiye Hall for a little bit. More than like specific for me, I don't know about the rest of you guys, so don't let me put words into your mouth. But I look at this guy and I go, a really talented kid, and it feels like an exclamation mark on a skill position group that during the offseason already had 2 real big alpha males. But, you've added Isaiah Nayor, you've added Jaleel Billingsley, and now you've added Hall. And it feels like Texas is making the strongest part of its team even stronger. It feels like that we're looking at a team that's definitely going to try to outscore people this season. That they averaged over 35 points a year ago, and it's clear improving the skill positions to an already talented group that averaged 18th in the country in scoring last year, that they want to ramp that up even more. How did you get, Jason? How did you view personally the addition of Hall?
Potentially extremely high reward, but comes with some risk just based on you can't dance around it. There were some off-field issues at Alabama where he was reportedly voted off by his teammates. I don't know 100% that's true, but that's what was been reported. So, it's always a little bit risky to bring someone like that in the locker room, but those coaches, Jeff Banks knew him. He recruited him to Alabama. So, I'm sure they had some heart-to-heart conversations, and they were convinced he was worth maybe whatever little risk he presents. But yeah, tremendously talented player. I mean, you saw Nick Saban in their spring game describing him as the most explosive or one of the most explosive players they have. And to be one of the most explosive players on an Alabama team that is loaded with explosive players, I tell you, he's enormously talented. But yeah, I'll be interested to see how quickly they can kind of just roll him into the offense and how quickly he gets adjusted. And, if he kind of stays about his business, I think he has a chance to be a tremendous asset for the Texas program.
Alex, same question.
Well, hey, first, man, shout out to our guy Nash is Cashed, man, on the message board. He changed his name to Nash Talks Texas, which I hate, man. I think Nash is Cashed was the awesomest screen name. But he does these cut ups, and he did that. He did the Ajay Hall every play from 2021. You can also look at some of the spring game stuff. There's not really much that he's played. I mean, I just like I don't know about this guy. Like, if there's the off the field stuff, I can't. With Nick Saban saying that he's one of the most explosive players on his team, to me that feels absurd. He looks gangly to me. He looks like he's a little bit uncoordinated. Last year it looks like. Just last year, if you just look at the clips that Nash posted, the guy's got 3 concentration drops. I think that there's just. I'll bet you it's one of these things where it's just in practice. Whenever he just lets loose and stuff, he's probably the guy that makes all the great plays. You look at the spring game from last year, goes up big for the contested catches, comes down with a one-handed grab, stuff like that. I think that those kinds of plays stick with people, and that definitely if you're that kind of player, they sort of stick with you, and you believe that you can do all that stuff. You get into situations where they're just asking you to run a drag route across the middle of the football field, and you put your hands in the wrong place, and it's like it doesn't look like your hands are natural. It doesn't look like they're soft, and what your job is to be as a receiver that catches those footballs. To me, it worries me a little bit that there could be something there. Is this something mentally needs to work through? If he got voted off the team, obviously it goes to show that there's some things. So I'm with Jason that it's a risky situation, but I'm not with Jason thinking that it's an extremely high reward thing unless everything falls together for the guy. And based on the state of the program right now, I think for everything to come together for the guy, he's probably going to have to be part of a program that has a real winning culture and a real solid culture, and one that's been developed and one that has been instilled strongly in these players. And we're yet to see whether or not that's even the case with what Sark has done at Texas yet. So
he's national 100. He's a Xavier Worthy type talent in terms of where
that gets no Xavier Worthy
in terms of where he was regarded coming out of high school. I mean, listen, if Alabama takes you, you're a pretty good.
Do you want to look at the clip? Do you just want to watch his clips from
no, but
we can't watch it right now. That'd make for a really bad broadcast. We were just all sitting there watching for the next.
When he announced his commitment, and a lot of it's sour grapes. Let's be totally clear on that. But Alabama fans weren't exactly crying over him going to Texas. They were saying some of the things Alex was saying is, hey, enjoy all the drop passes in Austin now. So,
hey, I had a source from Alabama, just for the record, who randomly, I didn't even reach out to him. He just sent me a message that said, you guys have the makings for the most entertaining season ever. And then he did like 8 ha-has in a row. I didn't even really know what that meant. I didn't ask.
But you kind of did. But you kind of did a little bit, didn't you? You didn't really know what it meant, but you kind of did.
Well, you got Hall. Billingsley was a guy.
You got Ewers coming in, who's what I'm like. Oh, there's a million different things that could.
But even the guys they taken from Alabama. Hall and Billingsley was a guy that was kind of in and out of the doghouse with the fans and the coaches. Obviously, Hall was. So I mean,
I think that's what he was hinting about.
yeah, I
That
think, yeah.
the two Alabama guys that came just happened to be two of the Alabama guys last year that were kind of in Saban's doghouse for whatever reasons they were. I mean, it's not like a secret that Hall didn't travel all of the games last year because he was kind of in the doghouse over some things. But, you know, I think Anwar, it feels like Anwar and I have done about 50 videos on this over the course of the last week and a half. Nothing that is so unforgivable that you'd say this one thing is the reason why he can't come back. No crimes, no arrests that we're aware of. Like, I mean, there's just this thing that he was kind of a malcontent a year ago and complained publicly on social media that he thought he was better than some Alabama receivers that were playing ahead of him. And just
Like who? Did
Like,
you think he was better than Mechie or Jameson Williams? Like
whoever was playing ahead of him, I got to admit, I don't have it locked down.
He might have been better than Slade Bolden. I'll give him that. Maybe, right?
But I would say that, you know, let me ask you this, because Alex, I want to return the question to you before I go to Anwar, because in my head, I think we're talking about a guy that has 4 career catches in games. He didn't participate in the offseason, although he, you know, potentially, I guess he could show up June 1st and then he could have a couple of months to acclimate himself a little bit, but he hasn't gone through an official practice with the coaches around. He's got to learn the offense, got to learn terminology. If I told you that this guy's going to play 20 snaps a game, average 18 yards a catch, and catch a couple of balls per game, meaning that he finishes the season with, let's say, 24 catches for 440 yards and 4 or 5 touchdowns, those numbers feel somewhat modest, right? Nobody's throwing a parade for those, but does that type of player with that type of yards per catch in your mind change the defense if he can just be that guy, a guy that they try to take a couple of shots with a couple of times a game, and, you know, he's a guy that contributes a touchdown every 3 weeks or so.
A touchdown every 3 weeks?
Yeah.
Of course that would be big. I mean, that'd be this, but I can't see a touchdown every 3 because you say 25 snaps, you know.
Well, it's
20
4
snaps
touchdowns in a season.
Well, right, but I mean, if you just look at I mean, that would be like, you know, I mean, you're talking about, you know, what these guys play on average. I mean, let's just look. So Texas versus KSU, they played 69 offensive snaps. Versus West Virginia, they played 57. Versus KU, they played 87. Versus ISU, they played 65. Versus Baylor, they played 65. Versus
hold on.
OSU,
So the question in those, Alex, with the receivers, how did that break down? What was the number 4 or 5 receiver getting in terms of game snaps last year?
It's not the number 4 would have been Jordan Whittington, but that was affected by injuries. So you look at Kelvonte Dixon at like 17% of snaps, maybe. Other than that, I mean, the only guys who played last year were Xavier Worthy, 86% of snaps, Joshua Moore, 55% of snaps, Marcus Washington, 52% of snaps, Jordan Whittington, 34% of snaps, Kelvonte Dixon, 17% of snaps. And other than that, you have Alvonte Woodard at 4%. And then just a whole motley crew of Kai Monies and Montrell Estells and guys like that who were under 4% of snaps.
Did you see that Woodard went to Sam Houston State this week, Alex?
Yeah, I did. He looked. That's a pretty flashy jersey that they have too. I was like, damn, man, he looks good in that thing. It looks like a better jersey than a place like Sam Houston State. So I would say that if Ajay Hall comes in and we're talking 25 snaps a game, I guess based on everything, we're talking like a 35% snap participant.
That sounds like a lot, doesn't it?
Yeah, because if you just think about it, you got Nair, who you know they're going to play. You got Washington, who you know they're going to play. You got Whittington, who you know they're going to play if he doesn't get hurt. Behind Whittington, you got Dejon Harris at number 30, who you know they're going to play if he doesn't get hurt. And then you got Worthy. Then you got 16. I just said his name, 16. Jason, Kelvonte Dixon. So you have those basically those 6 dudes, right? I think Ajay Hall would come in probably as the backup to one of those. Would he back up Nair?
Maybe a big asset. I think Washington, maybe a 2-year projection down the road. Maybe it helps a little bit this year, but next year you're going to lose Washington. You're going to lose Whittington. I mean, you're going to need some depth or some.
Yeah,
step in there.
it's something like that. Give him a little bit of time to adjust to the culture, maybe get a second chance. I mean, it's hard to write a guy off if he did have all. I haven't watched any of his high school film at all. If you watch his spring game film going against the twos at Alabama, it's very impressive. It's very impressive. He was not impressive versus Georgia in the national championship game after those guys all got hurt, and I'm guessing that he had to go in. But I think that a year or two, he just seems like it feels like there's probably some kind of maturity issues there. Drop passes, lack of focus, team doesn't want you around. Those all feel like things that maybe you can grow up through. And if that assimilation can happen at the same time that these departures, like Jason said, Washington, Whittington, etc., next year, it could be the timing could be just right. I think for maybe a year or two splash from the guy. I just think this year, it's going to be a decently packed wide receiver room, assuming that these guys can stay healthy.
Anwar, I was trying to give the guy some modest goals for numbers because I think a lot of Texas fans are like, here we go. That's another 1,000-yard receiver to add to the mix. And it's like, well, no, slow down a little bit. I felt like those were fairly modest goals, a couple of catches per game. And, when I hear Alex go through the numbers of snap percentages per player, it sounds like maybe I'm even aiming too high. Is that fair? I think everybody can see he's one for the future. But in terms of this season, should everybody taper back a little bit until this guy actually catches, 4 passes in a uniform at Texas?
I mean, first of all, we all know the burnt orange Kool-Aid has been poured and and people are just killing it right now. I mean, you can't those things that typically wait until August for it to be out of control. It's out of control right now, which is amazing based off of everything we saw last season. So you and I, Alex, Jason, may have the pump the brakes kind of attitude, mentality. I don't think we can make anybody else pump those brakes, Catch. So we could be, in the minority here. Man, Alex brings up some really good points. I think the other thing we got to factor in with this team that we kind of seen is that, we don't know if Jordan Whittington can stay healthy in all 12 games of a season. We're still waiting on Troy O'Meary and see can
but
he.
That's adding a set. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Go ahead, Alex. Go ahead.
But that's making it 7 wide receivers now that we're talking about. That Jai Hall comes in and.
I'm correct. Now, and again, we got to see if Troy O'Meary can make it to a season. And so you know that. Whether it's not those guys or not, I mean, injuries will occur. So the guys will have opportunities to play. He will have opportunities to play, just knowing that that's the sport. So, I think what it'll take a little bit is him getting an opportunity, then seizing that moment. And then all of a sudden he looks like a guy that you just can't, take off the field. I think if he does that, then and Rick is correct. We still have to factor in Brendan Thompson.
I can't believe I forgot him. Yeah,
Casey Kane's got a lot of run this spring, and
man.
Well,
it's going to be one of those things that when we get to the fall, I mean, there's just going to be guys who just they're not going to play. It's just bottom line. Because Sark's MO is typically he plays his guys. And he doesn't do that, when remember Tom would have 9 receivers catching balls. I'm sure Alex was probably grading for hours and hours with that rotation. That is what's Alex's word? It's not wackadoo, but whatever. Cockamamie rotation. There it is.
Yeah.
So anyway,
you know what? As Anwar was talking, I just kind of thought he had a good point because it's Rick Cervantes and for some reason we're only getting the Facebook chat. I'm sorry to the YouTube chat if we're missing you guys, but he mentioned Brendan Thompson, and then that's another guy to add on. The other thing is maybe you from just a roster management standpoint. Does the Jai Hall thing seem almost like with these other guys? if he does have all this potential, right, and he was the Rivals 100 guy, and he was the guy that Nick Saban says is one of the most explosive players on the team, and he can be that guy like we saw in the 2021 Alabama spring game, all this stuff. If he elevates his game at Texas to that level, he will play, right?
Yeah.
If not, what have you wasted, really? It's almost like you're taking a free roll on the guy just based on your past relationship with him. You know that he's got the talent to do it. Theoretically, can he do it in practice? We don't really, not in football practice, but can he do it in reality? Right? Is this just, can he take this? Can he take this potential and turn it into something that's real? That's still up in the air. But the fact of the matter is, it's like, if you got him on your team, at least you're in play for that outcome. So, I don't think,
Alex,
yeah.
Here's how I look at it. They didn't do in recruiting at the wide receiver position what they would hope to do. Fair, Jason? Outside of Brennan Thompson, there's a reason why they changed wide receiving coaches.
Mm-hmm.
This, I think, should be viewed as an additional 2022 recruiting piece. He's like a receiver they didn't get in recruiting. And if you close your eyes and think about the passing game this year, they've got a player in Isaiah Nayor who I think wants to go to the NFL after this season. They've got a guy in Jordan Whittington who's been pretty open about the fact that I think if that guy catches 700 and something yards worth of offense this year, he's probably going to go to the NFL. Marcus Washington is a senior. So there's a world next year where next spring you've got Isaiah Worthy, Brennan Thompson maybe in the slot. And who's your big outside wide receiver? I can close my eyes and see Hall being a starter in 2023 in the spring a lot easier than I can figure out how he's going to get catches during the 2022 season. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I can see that. How old's O'Meary? I lose track now with how hurt he's been. So he's had 2 real seasons. Yeah. So I guess he would have redshirted and
probably
then
20, going on 21.
So will he be considered a redshirt sophomore this year?
I think for now they'll still count him as a redshirt sophomore, but he has the COVID year to use too.
Okay, so then he's a guy who, certainly if he's healthy and he is what everybody's purported him to be, he'll be a factor over there at that X as well. I would think in 2023.
Hey Alex, here's what I wanted to ask you about depth chart. Although, based on the way people reacted to inquiring about numbers earlier today, maybe I shouldn't be asking about. We may just not have a depth chart this year. Nobody will complain. If Hall wanted to compete for a starting job, the most obvious one would be you got to go out and beat Washington and Nayor to get a starting spot on this year's team. He's not getting in the way of Jordan Whittington in the slot. My question would be, do you think they'll list him as a backup for X? Who's the backup for X? And are they going to put it in your mind? Do you think we'll see him competing with those other 2 guys in that spot? And who do you think in a world where Jordan Whittington gets hurt in week 6, and let's say he's only out for a week, what do they do at slot? Because I'm not quite. Is it as easy as Xavier then plays more slot and compensates for some of that, or because I think Brennan Thompson could be some of that answer, but it doesn't. It feels like the one hole at wide receiver is if you're playing Xavier outside, all of these other guys they've added are mostly outside guys. I don't know who the real slot backup is.
Yeah. So, all right. So for the first question about who we would compete with at the X, it would be Nayor and Washington for sure. But Jason mentioned it earlier. Casey Kane has had a good spring, and he's been practicing over there at that X behind those guys. So he would be somebody to keep an eye on. And then, O'Meary is gonna be back. We've seen him at practices, just on the side working out. He looks fine to me. I know he's probably not fine, he runs around better and cuts and stuff better than I would out there, these days. So I think that, that's a kind of tough group over there. As far as at the slot, what I think would happen without Whittington, Jaden Alexis has been a little bit banged up through spring. he would come into play. I think Dejon Harrison really would play a whole lot more. He looks like a good player, but that's in 3 wide sets. And I think what you would see happen is you would see a lot more Gunnar Helm, JT Sanders, and what you'd see, I think, is Jaleel Billingsley in the slot a good bit, because when they go to those 4 wide receiver sets like they did in the scrimmage this last week, like they did on Thursday of last week, they had number 9, Billings, or 9. I think he's 9. Is he 9 or 19? It was Billingsley. Regardless, they had him over in the slot, in their 4 wide sets, and with all the stuff that 9. Yeah, 9. That with all the stuff that the Coach Marion does and the stuff that he brought with the go-go stuff with the two running back sets, maybe if Whittington got hurt, we might see more of that kind of thing with the 2 running backs in the backfield, letting one of those guys get loose. I mean, that would be a great way to get a guy like Keelan Robinson more involved, right? If one of the slot receivers were to get hurt, get him involved as a receiver out of the backfield. So I think it would be a mix of all those things, because Ketch mentioned moving Worthy into the slot, getting mismatches in the slot with a guy like Nayor, getting Dejon Harrison more involved, and also getting more 2 tight end sets and getting more 2 running back sets, most specifically ones that allow Keelan Robinson to get the football in his hands in space as a wide receiver, and maybe stuff where it has Roschon Johnson in there as some kind of wildcat quarterback. So those would be my ideas about what would happen at the slot should anything happen to Whittington.
Let's start thinking about wrapping up today's.
And so I'm sorry. And Brennan Thompson once he gets here.
Let's start thinking about wrapping this thing up a little bit. I'm looking at the clock. It's 1:00. We've been going for almost an hour. Any last football thoughts that we want to get in, like elements of discussion? I'll throw it open to the floor before we go to parting shots. Is there anything that we haven't addressed today? I feel like we talked about O'Shawn Mathis a lot. I mean, this just in. He would help a lot. I mean, like he would. So I don't know that we need to say that for the 19th time since we found out he was in the portal. Anybody got anything at all they want to go into?
I mean, the only thing I would just throw in, it's just a minor thing, is that, Bijan won't play in the game due to an ankle sprain. Nothing that you concern yourself about in April, but you just take a mental note, in the fall when running backs do get banged up. So, not like I said, nothing to overreact to today, but just something to, mental note taken when you start thinking like, oh my gosh, is something bad? Offensive line, linebackers, what happens when the running back gets hurt? Like we always deal with the best case scenarios, and sometimes in real world scenarios that say you get a little tight if these things linger in the fall. I
wouldn't play Xavier Worthy. I mean,
if you're not playing Bijan, why are you going to play Worthy?
Well, because they're saying that Bijan has a small injury.
Well, I mean, he was at practice on Tuesday.
I say if you're 14 practices in and you've dodged all bullets, just wrap Xavier Worthy in bubble wrap until August, because I can't say it enough. I think Xavier Worthy, Jason, I said this, I can't remember if it was earlier this week or not. He's already, in my mind, the 3rd best receiver that I've ever seen at Texas. That from a talent-wise standpoint, he's up there with Roy Williams. I mean, Roy was such a freak athletically that I don't know that Xavier is that. But, boy, Xavier's more of a dog than Roy Williams ever thought about being. And Roy Williams played in the NFL for a long-ass time. Like,
who's number 2, Catch? Is it Limas?
I think Shipley's the best receiver and has put up the best career and accomplished the most things. And, even in a national championship game when Colt McCoy got hurt, he was the best player on the field that night and torched Alabama for like 12 catches and a whole bunch of yards, and almost single-handedly on offense brought Texas back into that national championship game. But after those 2 guys,
go back like Mike Adams or something. Maybe
you're starting to talk about some guys that –
is Quan Cosby in consideration?
Yeah,
Quan Cosby or Limas Sweed?
Quan's probably number 3, and Limas is probably, but Quan Cosby was like a 45-year-old freshman in 2005, and it still took Quan a couple of seasons. Quan was legitimately 25 before he was really, or 24 when he, whatever he was in 2005, he was a prospect in 2000, 2001. You know, he ended up going playing minor league baseball and then coming in. Xavier Worthy as a teenager stepped foot on campus and just took over. I think he's incredible. And I think that, you know, treat him like he's the best receiver in the country. And if it were me, I wouldn't have him out participating in that kid will want to play, but I give him special Bijan Robinson safety considerations.
I would too. I 100% agree. If you sit out Bijan, his ankle hadn't been hurt that bad. It hadn't been hurt that bad if he's out there practicing. So I would treat Xavier Worthy with all of the same bubble wrap for sure.
And the other thing is, I mentioned this earlier in the week, knock on every piece of wood that you have near you. I'm doing it right now, knocked on my desk. But you have to talk about things like it's been a pretty clean spring so far on the injury front. I mean,
oh, hell, Catch.
No, I mean, you have to say it. It has to be noted. Look, if one of your best players, and this happens all across the country, guys get hurt, and it immediately changes. Sarkisian even brought it up last week. You know, it's hard for us to talk about what our portal needs are because you don't go into the spring knowing what you're going to have left of a team when the spring is over with. And so far, you know, Andre Carrick's high ankle sprain is probably, off the top of my head, probably the worst thing that we've seen someone suffer so far in practice. And like, that's a win. I'm just saying, go into that final scrimmage, chalk it up as a W, and only play the guys that you really need to see. It's just me. I don't know better. You guys want me to ignore things until something happens, and then when they happen, you're like, "Why weren't you guys talking about this?" I'm talking. This is like, you got to say it. You have to say, if we're talking about one of the best things that's happened in spring so far, there have been no tragic bass fishing accidents.
Mute Catch's mic. Hurry up before it's too late.
Rob says Morrow's mouth injury. I shouldn't laugh at that, but that's actually really funny, Rob. All right, let's go into parting shots then. Anwar, you want to lead us off?
Yeah, you know, it's interesting. I did a podcast thing appearance with Andy Staples Catch, and that was really interesting. He came up with, you know, we talked about the culture, you know, at Texas, and it kind of touched in a little bit on what something you talked about, Catch, as far as the difference between having a coach that comes in and tries to create this whole new culture in Texas, as opposed to someone who adapts to what Texas is. And he said, you know, he feels like the person who's ultimately could be successful at Texas is the person that almost takes the Pete Carroll USC approach, which is don't shy away from it being Hollywood.
Allowing reporters at practice. Yeah.
Allowing reporters at practice. And don't shy away from your brand and who you are. Enhance that. It's like, that's who we are. We are Hollywood. And go with, we are Austin, but then within that, find ways to then motivate the guys to be successful without it, as opposed to trying to strip away what Texas is. And then the guys feeling like, you know, there's this culture clash. So I thought it was really interesting perspective. And I'm sure this is something that you would probably have, you know, a little bit of insight on, and maybe even Jason. But when you start talking about culture, what could work, just having a coach that says it's okay for us to, you know, be out at Lake Austin. It's okay for South by Southwest. It's okay for all these other kind of things. But when time comes on Saturday, we're also going to go kick some ass too. I thought it was really interesting. And that's kind of really, as a culture conversation, that's kind of my parting shot.
All right, Mr. Dunlap, what do you got?
Nah, I don't have anything. I've already talked too much in this podcast.
There's nothing you need?
I'm tired of it. I'm tired. Yeah, if there's anybody out there that can help me with help me with the French drain, help me with how to slope this thing, you guys can shoot me an email.
French drain's been going on for you for years, man.
Well, no, I got it fixed by a dude that did the masonry on my retaining wall, but it doesn't work. So I've just dug it up and I'm trying to redo it. trying to redo it the old man. If you need something fixed, you sometimes got to do it yourself, boys. So I'm just trying to do it myself.
Or don't you need to be asking for free manual labor.
No, I'm not going to do that.
What Alex needs is for one of you guys.
I've done the manual labor. I've done the manual.
Come dig for Alex, and you can talk football with him while you dig.
the trench is done. I need to figure out how to slope it to where the water will go down the side. So
you need to you need to go onto an Aggie video.
I need somebody. Oh God, I think they give. They would give me the wrong advice, my brother. Yeah. So yeah, no party shot for me. Enjoy the spring game. I'll have some, deep dig up on the site for all that stuff. I'll get my mock draft up. That's gonna be a busy ass couple days until Wednesday. I'll get out of here, go to Las Vegas for the draft. I'll be there until probably like Saturday. So looking forward to it. Hope everybody enjoys their weekend, enjoys the draft, and
you need to do a running diary during your draft experience.
Yeah, I won't be here for the Modcast next week, so I'll just you guys can wish me luck that morning with how I'm feeling after spending the Wednesday night before the draft in Las Vegas.
I want a running diary of your entire Vegas trip as one of your content pieces the next week. I want to know how bad it got, who you met, what weird things happened.
For sure. Hey, that sounds like a good
Where are you staying?
I'm staying in an Airbnb, a pretty nice one, very, very close to the strip. So we'll see how it goes. But yeah, man. So everybody enjoying the spring game. I'll see everybody here on the Modcast. Not this next week, but the week after.
Mr. Suchomel, what are we going to get a running diary of you doing?
Nothing exciting, unfortunately.
Being a parent.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I got a mini rant. I'm not going to get worked up like Alex quite, but so y'all have heard me talk about my son finally got his license, and it's been 4 or 5 months now, but it's been the best thing that ever happened to us because he can finally drive himself to school and work and all this other shit. So my daughter, we took her in last Friday to get her permit. And you fellas won't need to deal with this for several years, but it's fucking impossible almost to get a permit. So you can't find appointments, right? They're out till June and July. Well, they released a couple appointments Good Friday, and I just happened to time it right, and I nabbed one. We had to drive to my wife had to drive my daughter to Marble Falls, an hour away. They got out there. She had her passport, birth certificate, Social Security. She had the water bill. She had you have to verification of enrollment form through the school, proof of residency, some form. They wouldn't give my daughter her learner's permit because the water bill was too new. It was the most recent water bill we had. Nope, it's got to be an older water bill. So
you had to drive up to Marble Falls to get that answer?
Yeah, my wife was like, come on, dude. We've got all this shit. I drove an hour up here, and he's like, nope, can't do it. I swear it's like a game, like a power trip. They want to – I mean, how much more difficult can they make it? So now we have to go back. Somebody else cancels. I was able to jump in and grab their appointment. Otherwise, seriously, you can't get in until June or July. So we're driving back to Marble Falls.
1431? Do you take 1431?
My wife took her, but she went out 29, I think. I don't even know how she got there exactly.
Dude, that's a hike from where you live. I mean, it's right here by me, but to you, you can't even
get over the west and south. Yeah, I know it's a good hour drive, but so we got to take her out of school tomorrow and drive her back over there. And I'm seriously going to just give them like 100 sheets of paper. I'm going to print out every goddamn electric bill, gas bill, everything I can think of for like the last year, and just say filter through it and take what you need. But just frustrating as hell, man. And I've always heard the horror stories about how difficult it is to get their permits or their license, and the hoops they make you jump through to get these kids a license it's incredible. So,
hey, Jason, can I ask you a question? I don't know this answer. Do they not have driver's ed in high schools anymore? Does everyone have to go through private programs?
We did, or my kids did. I don't think they offer it through school. If they did, I never heard about it on where. Yeah, they had to do. It was a company called Aceable, and it was pretty easy. I mean, just but no, like when I was in school, the middle school football coach was my driver's ed coach.
Anwar, I had a famous UT football player who served as my driver's ed teacher in high school.
Really?
The one and only Johnny Ham Jones.
Oh yeah, you got to be kidding me.
Yeah, you've mentioned that before. Yeah,
Ham Jones.
Wow. What a
Yes.
weird fact about Ketch.
Yeah, I wouldn't know me saying driver's ed would have prompted that. So
Rob said pay with pennies. That's a good idea, Rob. I'm gonna go in there like $20 worth of pennies, or whatever the hell it is that I gotta pay tomorrow, and be like, let's count them all out. Here's your payment. But hopefully, roughly this time tomorrow, hopefully my daughter will have her permit if things go well, so I can get 2 of my kids on the road and make my life a hell of a lot easier, because she's the most active of my 4. We're always taking this girl somewhere, so it'd be nice to get her a little independence.
Right.
It's funny. I did a chat. Someone mentioned Ham, Lamb, and Jam. So Ham was my driver's ed teacher. Lamb was the subject of a chapter in my book, and I've never met Jam Jones. Officially on the record for all of the Ham, Jam, and Lamb Joneses. Anwar, back in the day, there were 3 Joneses on the team: Ham Jones, Lamb Jones, and Ham, Jam, and Lamb. Sorry, the three Joneses on the same team. They nicknamed them that. My final parting shot is just shout out to Joel Embiid last night hitting that 3-point shot against the Raptors. Yes, Ben, I wrote a book. You can find my books at like every discount bookshop in Austin. I wrote it like 10 years ago, but like a year ago, I went to Half Price Books on Anderson Mill in 183. They had like 5 copies.
Oh, what were they going for?
I didn't even look what the cost was. I just assumed like a few
I'd imagine
bucks.
half price, right?
Yes, you can still go
half off the discounted price, though, Alex. That's what I want to know.
Oh, he just said half price books. I
looked and was like, oh wow! I was surprised because I wrote the book in 2008. You can go buy my book, at which I will get no residuals. So if you hate me and you don't want any money to go into my pocket, buy a bunch of those books because I'm not seeing anything from them. But yes, you can still go on to Amazon.com. The book is there. It is the Die Hard fans. I forget what the hell they called it. It was a long name. The Die Hard fans, like Bible of Texas football or some shit like that. That's funny. My book has so many words in it, I can't completely remember the title of it. I was just going to say, go Joel Embiid. Keep knocking down those threes. I'm going game by game as a Sixers fan because James Harden, very quickly. There it is, Mike. The Die Hard fans guide, not gift, guide to Longhorn football. There's actually, just so you know, Alex, there are a couple of chapters in that book that I think are really, really good. Not every chapter, but some of them I think is some of the best stuff that I ever wrote. I think my Johnny Lamb Jones chapter is one of my favorite things that I've ever done.
You got another one in you before you kick the keister?
Yeah.
Before you die.
One of these days, it'll have to be, I will do a tell-all expose of basically being on the internet at the inception of the internet and being a college football reporter online. Jason and I have a couple of those. Like he and I could both do one of those. I just think that I've got more crazy stories. Like for instance,
remember shit. I don't know how you remember. I can't remember half the stories that I've experienced.
Man.
I was telling the story yesterday, Alex, of a kid. So the video's going around of this baseball player from Weatherford blasting some kid on the third base line. And I was telling the guys in the chat that back in the day, like 20 years ago, Weatherford had a football prospect who threatened to fight me at the Dixie Chicken because he didn't like his recruiting ranking.
And he was drinking beer.
He was drinking beer.
You're like, I'm gonna lower you down to a 3-star now that
he literally the dude kind of had me scared for my life a little bit because, like, what are you going to really do? Fight a beer drinking football prospect in the Dixie Chicken of all places? Like, you don't want to be the guy who's fighting prospects. So, like, I was really fearful that he really wanted to fight.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and then the kicker to it, Catch, as you sent us a story, then this guy actually served jail time and then prison time after he actually killed someone. So there
multiple stints of prison, it seems.
Yeah, so there was a valid reason to be concerned.
There was reason for fear. There was reason for fear. And oh, by the way, that night I was also at the same time all that was happening. It may have been Billy Lucci who played the cooler to that whole thing. So I'm sitting with Lucci, and the guy from Weatherford comes up and starts talking to me about his ranking and kind of how he wants to fight me. And it was Lucci who kind of smoothed it all over. Say what you want to about Billy Lucci, but he's great to have with you at the Dixie Chicken if shit's about to go down. Just from personal experience with 17-year-old beer drinking college football prospects. It was a wild time back then. Hey, Ben says only 2 are left, and he just ordered one of them. Wow. Someone bought my book in real time. Thank you. It's nice to know that I can write that thing 14 years ago and somebody can still use it as a coaster. For myself, Alex, Jason, and the cowboy from the state fair. Say howdy, Tex.
Big Tex.
It's been the Orange Bloods Modcast, brought to you by myperfectfranchise.net. Reach out to Andy, seriously. Reach out to Andy and send him a note and say, look, I've been working for somebody my entire life. I don't want to work for people anymore. I want to work for myself. Can you help me get that started? That's what he does. Why don't you just say goodbye, Tex, for us real quick, and then that'll be it.
Goodbye, everybody. See you later.